So one thing that was heavily talked about headed into the Commanders offseason was that they need to upgrade the offensive line. They need to get the trenches better. More specifically, the left tackle position. There were mixed feelings. There were some people that felt like Brandon Coleman just needed more years to develop, and there were other people that felt like he was a god and Washington needed to be in the market for a left tackle this offseason. Well, news just came out that Washington is rumored to be interested in a former star left tackle. Let's talk about it.
The way that we live is not for everybody.
Nah, that ain't it, y'all.
How do you think the rest of Jaden Daniels' career is going to go? If we're, 6, 7 games into Jaden Daniels' career and he's already milking injuries, like...
Nigga, stop saying my name, you dick riding bastard. I love the way she move it, shake it on me. When she cry for him, and shawty is the winner. You can tell that shawty's low beginner, she's confident.
Good, y'all. It's your man Juangotti here. Before we get into today's video, I want you guys do me a favor, subscribe to my fitness channel as I'm documenting my journey from fat to fit. Link down below in the description. YouTube, what's going on? It's Juangotti here. We have the Washington Commanders video, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about how the Washington Commanders seem to be in the market for a veteran left tackle, and what does that mean for Brandon Coleman's job? So without further ado, let's get straight into today's video. Before we do, make sure you guys go down below, leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel. If you are new, turn on post notifications so you get notified when I upload new videos like this to the channel. 109,000 subscribers, so we greatly appreciate if you can reach that goal as soon as possible. Thank you so much. Let's get straight into today's video. So let's go a while back, okay? So going around last year, April, when we drafted Brandon Coleman, the very first thing that a lot of people were saying was that he's a smaller offensive lineman. So they immediately said he is a guard. Like, that's a lot of people's first assessment of it. But then we get into camp and we get into the preseason, and when he was actually partaking in camp in the preseason and stuff like that in actual season, he was at left tackle. But before we even got to his on-field play, we got to also discuss that Brandon Coleman was banged up all of the offseason for the most part. There were some times where he would practice, sometimes he would play, but for the most part, he was dealing with a ton of injuries this offseason. And that's not no excuse, but that just goes to show you, if you have a guy that has missed a lot of the offseason time, he's new to the position. Yes, he's only played I want to say tackle football for 6 years now, and he's trying to be all over the offensive line at college, and then he gets to the NFL and they say, yeah, you just going to jump in and play one of the, if not the hardest position on the offensive line. And I simply say he showed flashes. Like that Myles Garrett game, the Browns game, I'm not saying Myles Garrett ain't doing to do his thing. There were some plays that he was solid on, but for the most part, it was kept quiet on that side. Like, I understand he had his moments in which he looked overwhelmed. He got out-muscled. He got beat. But that happens. It's a part of ball. It's football. No one is going to be perfect. However, I say Washington being interested in adding a veteran to this rotation may not necessarily be a bad thing, and may not also be a surprise. Because remember, last season, this kind of was foreshadowed, if you ask me, because they were never really sold on Brandon Coleman to be the full-time left tackle. Now, obviously, they gave him the more fair share of snaps because they want him to be the ultimate left tackle. How good would it be for Adam Peters to have on his resume that he found a gem of a left tackle in the mid-rounds? That would be absolutely outstanding, obviously, but it was never really a full send or full comfortability. That's why he would split reps with Cole Luke, or Trent Scott would get in there as well. Like, we would never have Brandon Coleman 100% for all 17 games, right? And I think that was always in the back of their mind, is we see the potential of Brandon Coleman. We see that he has what it takes to be a left tackle. Anytime Adam Peters, Dan Quinn talks about him, it's always in a positive light. It's never negative. However, they know the kind of team that we're trying to build. It's not that we don't have time to develop players like Brandon Coleman, who, quite frankly, again, is going to need time to develop. He may ultimately turn to an absolute beast. But again, 6 years new to the game of football, okay? And he played all over the offensive line in college. So it's not like he just strictly was left tackle. He played guard. He played everywhere on offensive line. So, in my opinion, I like the move to address left tackle. If you're not comfortable with putting Brandon Coleman back out there, I like the move of addressing the left tackle position with a veteran for maybe a year or two and allow Brandon Coleman to develop until he's ready. Now, you're like, Juan, who was this veteran superstar or former star that you're talking about? Well, it was rumored that Washington has interest in Ronnie Coleman. Albert Breer put it out. I said Ronnie Coleman. Yeah, baby! That's how you know I've been in the gym too much. It was rumored that Washington was interested in Ronnie Stanley, left tackle from the Baltimore Ravens. And when that came out last night, again, it didn't catch me by no surprise. It did kind of have me like, well, dang, Brandon Coleman may not be the ultimate starter this season, but it didn't flip in my head like this may be a really good thing. He may be able to get some mental reps. He may be able to actually just develop behind a really good left tackle in Ronnie Stanley. Now, if you ask Ravens fans or if you ask, other people around the league, they may not say Ronnie Stanley is not the guy that he once was. Like, we know he was really, really good with Baltimore at a point in time, but as of late, he hasn't been the best. However, I think it's an improvement whether you get him here. That's bringing in another veteran left tackle. So moving on to the article, though, it say the Commanders must improve in the offense and defensive trenches this offseason. Washington must add a game-changer edge rusher who could also help stop the run, defensive tackle depth, and probably 2 starters on the offensive line. We don't know where the Commanders could look to upgrade on the offensive line. Tyler Biadasz and Sam Cosmi are set. However, Cosmi could miss at least the first half of next season due to knee surgery. Brandon Coleman, the rookie left tackle, figures into the mix somehow. Is that at left tackle, right tackle, or guard? Only the Commanders know the answer. One player who could change everything and help Washington improve at 2 spots is Baltimore Ravens left tackle Ronnie Stanley. Stanley will be 31 this month and enters his 9th NFL season. Ravens can't agree to a new contract with Stanley before free agency opens up next week. He will have plenty of suitors. Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated says the Commanders will be one of at least 3 teams interested in signing Stanley. He quoted this: "Baltimore is clearly in it. The Chiefs are in it. The Commanders are in it," Breer said Friday on 98.5 The Sports Hub.
Market, who are you up against? Well, this is who I think the teams are going to be in the Ronnie Stanley market. Baltimore is clearly in it. The Chiefs are in it. The Commanders are in it. If you're Ronnie Stanley, you've got the Chiefs, who've been in 3 straight Super Bowls. You've got Baltimore, which is where you've been and where you're very comfortable and where you've spent 9 years. You've got Washington, which won 12 games, has what a lot of people think is a generational young quarterback. And do you even have to move if you go play for the Commanders?
In the video, you can see Breer begin discussing Stanley around 7-minute mark. Breer discussed how Stanley has some excellent options and Washington inclusion is in on the mix. Says a lot about how far they've come. One of the positions of Stanley potential signings will be with the Commanders is that he already plays for another team in Maryland or somewhat the DMV area. Even though we know Baltimore ain't the DMV area, whatever, they outsiders always like to include us with Baltimore. But they say one of the positives that Stanley doesn't have to go far is essentially he can stay inside the state of Maryland. Continuing on, though, it says Stanley's health is a major question mark. However, if healthy, he dramatically upgrades Washington offensive line, allowing Commanders to move around Brandon Coleman. So that's the article. Really, my first thought is they decide to bring in Ronnie Stanley at left tackle and maybe have Brandon Coleman as the backup. However, what I'm grasping from this article and kind of what a lot of other people have been saying as well is this doesn't necessarily have to push Brandon Coleman to the bench. This could make Brandon Coleman a suitor for another position on the offensive line. Again, I've already explained to you guys that he's played at different positions on the offensive line. Guard, left tackle, right tackle. So with the injury to Sam Cosmi, maybe you put Brandon Coleman at right guard until he comes back, and then Sam Cosmi is able to fulfill that role, and then maybe that kind of gives you a foreshadow look at how Brandon Coleman looks at guard, and then you can maybe move on from Nick Algrady maybe. But again, Nick Algrady hasn't been horrible. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to say the offensive line struggles is blown out of proportion, because it definitely does need some upgrading potential, but it's not as bad as it was perceived in the beginning. But of course, Ronnie Stanley clearly makes a upgrade. Don't get me wrong. And I would love to have him here for a 1 year, maybe 2 year deal. But my whole mind behind doing this is so we can develop Brandon Coleman to be the left tackle, because although he is smaller, he has length on his arms, man. So he's very strong at the point of attack. He can continue to develop behind a star left tackle in Brandon Coleman, a star left tackle in Ronnie Stanley, and I think that's the right path that we should go down. Now, again, this isn't me trying to tell them to not look at other options as far as maybe moving him to in the interior, but I don't know, man. I really think Brandon Coleman has what it takes to be the left tackle of the future, and you get a veteran in here again to help develop him along with the coaching. I think it'll do wonders for Brandon Coleman, and again, he already has 1 year of playing under his belt, so he's only going to get better. Some of the veterans that are available is Cam Robinson, Ronnie Stanley, Tyron Smith, Cornelius Lucas, Kelvin Beachum, DJ Humphries, Jackson Barton, and Jerron Christian. We remember Jerron Christian, and a couple of other guys. It's not really that big of a market, but they're awesome, solid guys. I wouldn't be surprised if Washington brought back Cole Luke, but I do think if you bring in Ronnie Stanley, there's no need for Cornelius Lucas. He is going to be 34 at the start of next season. Ronnie Stanley's going to be 31, so you slightly can get younger there. You could go with Cam Robinson, but he's going to be a little bit more expensive as he's 29, and he's probably the best, left tackle outside of Ronnie Stanley at this point. That's in free agency. Tyron Smith is still around, but he's 34 years old. Are you really comfortable with putting your trust in a 34-year-old vet? I would, in terms of development. You know what I'm saying? Because I think if there's nobody on this list better than Tyron Smith, that's a first ballot Hall of Famer when it comes to helping Brandon Coleman. But if we're doing this to have a guy come in and start day one and play all 17 games, then I think you look no further than Ronnie Stanley. So let me know what you guys think about it down below in the comment section. There you have it. Albert Breer, the Washington Commanders, are rumored to be interested in Ronnie Stanley when he hits free agency. So keep a lookout on that as Washington looks to improve the trenches this offseason. It's always me, boy, Juan Gotti. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Want to roll to 9,000 subscribers, so we greatly appreciate it if you can reach that goal as soon as possible. Thank you so much. You have a blessed, stay safe, be easy out there.
Ballin' like I'm Deshaun, throw the bomb, G. That's IG, my jersey never seen a laundry.